Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everyone? It's Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan. A lot to talk about in this Inside the Birds. Of course, we're going to continue to preview and break down each position by position. We'll continue with tight end in this podcast, which is for the Eagles. You know, for some teams, that's not much of a podcast. For the Eagles, obviously, that's a big story because they have two very good ones and obviously put a lot of resources into some young tight ends throughout the season that we'll get into as well. Eagles claimed a player off the waivers. He has some connection to the coaching staff. We'll get into that. And of course, I mean, it wouldn't be a podcast, an Inside the Birds podcast, if we didn't have a little bit of Carson Wentz news. So we'll get into that as well. Also, I want to remind people that we're working diligently, Adam, to bring some new shows here to the Inside the Birds platform. We've had some productive discussions in the past few days, so stay tuned for information on that. And then also, you and I are going to start doing a once-a-week live stream in the evening, right? And we're going to make it our Ask ITB live stream hour, half hour. We'll see how long it goes. But it's a cool concept, right? Because we used to do take a lot of questions, but man, it's hard to get listener questions in these days because there's been just so much hard news. So we figured, why not do a new show, a live show where people can ask questions both leading up to the show and in the middle if you're watching, and just devote it only to questions from our viewers and listeners.
Yep, and we'll on this show today, which you're hearing Thursday morning, for you early birds, we appreciate it. We're gonna have different information than we had before in Carson Wentz, stuff that we had not talked about before. We're also going to do something different here because we know because they've told us this. They've gone on our YouTube message board there and we have listeners who aren't just Eagle fans here. So we're going to not only talk about Wentz, we're going to talk about the quarterback landscape. This is going to be fun because I have a lot of information on this. Watson, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, Jimmy Garoppolo, because this is a quarterback-driven situation the Eagles are in, and some teams out there that were mentioned are some you know about. Some we're not going to be in on Wentz. We're going to be in on these other quarterbacks, and the quarterback talk is going to dominate. I mean, dominate, Geoff, this offseason.
Absolutely, and just the names that you mentioned, who would have thought a year ago at this time we'd be talking about Carson Wentz and Matthew Stafford and maybe Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson on the move? That's unprecedented. And it's also fascinating. So I know a lot of people are going to be tuned in, especially to this episode, to hear what you have to say on some of this potential movement. Look forward to getting into that. Also, wanted to remind people our new offseason schedule. We drop Monday and Thursday, 6 a.m. We are 2 pods a week, but we are still continuing to do other things like this live stream, which I believe we'll do it Tuesday at 7 o'clock of the coming week. So Tuesday, 7 p.m., I think the date on that is what, the 22nd? Am I correct on that? Or
that would be the 23rd. Tuesday.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 23rd.
Yep,
okay.
Yep.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's not going to be very long. It's not going to be like an hour. We'll probably make it like a half an hour. And it'll be a lot of Ask ITV questions. Mm-hmm. What I'd warn you folks is don't send us 10 questions. Send us your best one. Your best one. And we will almost certainly read it on the air and answer, we promise. But sending in some convoluted 5-paragraph question, trust me, I will ignore it. Make it easy for us, because the whole key to this thing is not to make people tired.
Right, short and sweet.
Exactly, because people complain. The attention spans, I get it. Your attention spans aren't long. We all are like that. So please make it easy on us. We appreciate your interest in what we're doing, and we definitely want to help you out.
Right, and also remember, if you want we give daily updates through 97.3 ESPN, our partners in radio, from Monday through Friday. We do a football at 4 segment every day, Monday through Friday, myself, Adam, Andrew DeCecco. So if you want our kind of daily opinion on things going on, just make sure you catch that on our YouTube channel. It's usually up by 6:30 all the time on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out too. Let's get into this because I agree with you, Adam. This whole quarterback carousel is going to be fascinating. And I think when I speak to people about it, and I imagine you hear the same things, that in order for this carousel to keep going, the next domino to fall will very likely be the Carson Wentz trade. We may get to a point where something else happens because the Carson Wentz trade is stalling, but at that point, most people expect that to be the catalyst.
It's funny you said that, and I didn't tell you that, and you didn't tell me you were going to say that because a GM said exactly that to me this week. Mm-hmm. He said two things. This is this one I wrote down as he was telling me this. He said, quote, if you're looking for a starting quarterback, you'll have to make a trade or draft one. He goes, you're not getting one in free agency. So I said, you mean, I gave him a bunch of guys that are out there. He goes, no, those guys are starters, dude. We're not. He goes, no. He goes, listen. He goes, we're not in a position to get a journeyman who's just going to start for 5 or 6 games. He goes, those guys are out there. He goes, if you want those guys, you can have them. But if you want a real starter, this is not your year to sign one. You may want to trade for one. He goes, those guys are available. It was just a matter of what you're willing to trade and whether you are willing to ask for the player instead of waiting for the team that has the quarterback to offer to bring the player's name up, because that would perceive losing leverage. If you had Carson Wentz, right? If you were Harry Roseman, say because what happens is you have free agency calls, you have trade calls, you look at your roster. Hey, so anyone you want to move, anyone you want to talk about, and you would probably purposely, if you wanted to trade Wentz, you don't want to lose leverage, so you wouldn't even bring his name up. You would wait till they asked you about him. Mm-hmm. Then you'd have a discussion, because if you said, hey, man, do you have any interest in Wentz? Well, you're trying to move him? Oh, no, we're not. We're just curious. What are you going to say?
Right.
You don't want to lose leverage, so it's a real cat and mouse game.
Right. And think about what it's like when most people who listen to us, I'm sure, have played some kind of fantasy sports in their life. And, you go in your draft and you're so excited when you get a player that you really like who, for whatever reason, fell like 2 or 3 rounds lower than you projected that player. And you look at another team here in real life. Now, maybe Carson Wentz right now isn't what he was a year or 2 or even 3 years ago, but you're a team, you need a quarterback. You'd much rather try to get Wentz economically, like that late round steal, right? Than having to turn your attention to Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. And now you're talking about giving up like 4 or 5 first round picks. Who knows? I mean, you're going to have to give up the whole farm to get a guy like that, when potentially you might get Carson Wentz at a rate that's fairly reasonable.
Yeah, look, some people suggested to me, the longer this goes on, the better discount you're going to get. I don't know about that, because you're only trading one player. You're not trading 5 here. You're not trading 5 quarterbacks. You're trading one guy, okay? Mm-hmm. I understand. He got benched. He's not the same player he once was. That's obvious. We all know that. But he is a quarterback. He's very talented. You should even if the Eagles don't wind up even if Roseman doesn't get a first-round pick, he's going to get pretty significant compensation. He's not just going to get a second-round pick or just 2. There'll be other things involved. I'm pretty certain of that, talking to teams that have talked to the Eagles. They have a pretty good idea how he wants, and I think you'd mention it from your sourcing. In the end, they're going to do the best that they can. Are they going to get the king's ransom? No. He was benched. Right. It's funny. Believe it or not, Geoff, teams actually know why he wants out. Why he wants out, like to a certain degree. They don't know everything because they don't work for the Eagles. But my sense is they've dug on this situation because it's so bizarre. Like, why would he want one out? The Eagles don't want to move him. They don't want to absorb this $33 million cap hit. It's not what they want to do. But just talking to a couple teams recently, last 5 or 7 days. They kind of had a feeling why he wanted out. It wasn't just Doug Peterson. We've been trying to tell people that. Right. I found that interesting. I don't know how these teams get intel on players like this. I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, it's a good point. I shameless plug time, but you brought it up. Wrote a column on our website, InsideTheBirds.com, that tried to lay out many of the examples of why Carson Wentz would feel frustrated and not supported by the team. But also, the point of the column was to say that the Eagles are in a crossroads because everything that's happened over the last 6 weeks, Adam, was never in the blueprint. You think about them coming out of the 2019 season, they made the playoffs. Carson went 4-0 down the stretch, and they had an opportunity I know they wanted to turn over the roster, but they also could have done things to make a better situation, and they didn't. I laid that out, and here we are. The Eagles you couldn't inject them with more truth serum than ever has been made, and they're not going to tell you that they saw themselves firing the coach, rehauling the coaching staff, trading a disgruntled Carson Wentz. And it's also a culture shock for them and a little bit of humble pie because they've always been the one to tell the superstar when their time was up. They told Brian Dawkins when it was time to go. They told Donovan McNabb when it's time to go. This is probably the first time since Reggie White, in 93? Yeah. That a player of this kind of caliber, and that's a different ownership and a different era, basically said, I don't want you anymore.
Norman Brayman, the former Eagles owner, the Eagles owner then, he didn't do a very good job of making sure that happened. There were a couple things going on with that situation, but I just remember, obviously this is years before we covered the NFL, but it was just absurd how guys wanted out, back then when though they were still competitive after Reggie left, certainly under Ray Rhodes, and they never were as good as they should have been. Obviously, the tragic death of Jerome Brown, but this situation is interesting in that we're talking now about a quarterback who people believe, at least believe, was a special quarterback. The Eagles obviously did. That's why they traded up. And I asked a couple personnel guys from teams that looked at Wentz here, and I said, where are you at with this guy? He goes, look, can't get in the guy's head, but he was really bad last season. I was like, what do you think he could be better? Do you think with better coaching, better situation? He goes, yeah. One guy said to me, absolutely. He said, obviously there was something wrong with that situation. It can't just all be the quarterback, because it had to be some other factors, and this is kind of things that you look into. So when this gets done, I'm going to be fascinated to see how he plays. And we still, at least I can't speak for you, but I still think it's going to be the Colts, barring a minor surprise, I would say.
Right.
And just to wrap that part up, I still think what this GM told me within the last week is that I'm telling you, once this Wentz trade gets done, because he had the high-end Stafford trade, and we know that was a different trade because that included quarterback for quarterback, which is so unbelievably rare. This one, if it goes like we think, will be a quarterback for picks and potentially a player maybe, Geoff?
It's possible. So here's what I suspect here based on what my conversation. I recently was talking with a very high-ranking team source, not an Eagles source, not a Colts source, but someone who knows
high up in personnel,
very high personnel source who knows both of these teams too.
Okay.
What he told me was that his understanding was the Eagles were first asking for 2 first-round picks. Now that's been out there. That's the whole Matthew Stafford type of compensation minus the extra quarterback, right? Well, obviously that didn't happen. And this source told me that the Colts are adamant about not overpaying, to the point that even a first and a second round pick were discussed between the Eagles and Colts. And that kind of deal has not happened, right? So it leads me to believe that I think it was Ron Jaworski last week, Adam, who said he heard that the compensation would probably be a couple of second round picks, maybe a conditional pick. That conversation that I had with the very high ranking league source tells me in my gut that the Eagles and Colts will eventually make a trade, but I have real skepticism of them being able to get a first round pick now. So now it's about getting the best kind of compensation that you can get. And in a separate discussion with another source, I got the sense that a player could be involved here in the trade to make the trade work for both sides.
Okay. And that's where an extra player sometimes, if you can't get a first round pick, is there a player you would take from us that could help you, certainly be a factor that could help alleviate the issue that you're not going to, could be a DN or it could be a player let's put it this way, sub-package player, whether it's a running back, a third DN, someone who could help weight this trade a little bit if you're not going to get a first round pick. But I said this on Twitter, I guess on Wednesday, that this is really from 2 teams, and they seem to agree on this. It doesn't sound like if the Eagles are going to get a 1, it doesn't sound like they're getting one in 2021. 2021. It sounds like that's what they want.
Right.
There might be one coming in 2022, but what that winds up looking like, I couldn't tell you. But this very high-ranking source, who his team is looking for a quarterback and is looking at the landscape, said it. He goes, "I'm telling you, the Eagles want a first-round pick. I don't know." He's like, "Look, they're not." He goes, "Right now, This was 2 days ago. What's today? Thursday morning. So Tuesday, this guy goes, I don't think they're getting one in 2021. And he goes, if they get one in 2022, remember, that's not as valuable as a one this year. It's a little, obviously the value's not as good.
Right.
But it's a one, but it wouldn't be. So, because the other thing is also when you get a future pick and the Raiders learned this the hard way, who the hell knew the Bears would be as good as they were in 2018 when they traded away Khalil Mack? They thought they'd suck. I remember talking to them about that. They were kind of shocked. Like, who knew that they would make the Bears make the playoffs that year?
Yeah, that's right. It was a lower. In fact, they actually still made up well because I think that was the pick that they used to take Josh Jacobs. But nonetheless,
right? Yeah, right. But it wasn't
Farrell with their own pick. But yeah,
it wasn't right. But it was not a high one. But anyway, and then look, the other thing is there. Yes, you and I seem to be in agreement. So we have the Stafford trade up here. Okay. The Wentz trade will be here in compensation. It's not anywhere close to Stafford. I'm sure of that. If they get a one, I don't see them getting much more. And again, it may not even be this year. They may not get a one this year. So whenever the trade gets done and whatever they get, that's the next level of quarterback. And then you've got, so if your team looking to trade for a quarterback, whether it be Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, though the Raiders are not shopping, I'm told, at all. They're not. Marcus Mariota is completely available, by the way. Multiple sources told me, including an NFL GM, he absolutely is available. He goes, listen, I'm telling you, he said, someone's going to get him. And he goes, I don't know if he's going to come in and start, but he's going to be competing for a starting job elsewhere. And he goes, listen, talking to them, he goes, when you're talking to a team when a guy's available. You also know when the team doesn't want to trade a guy, but they'll listen. Mm-hmm. He goes, Carr was not even brought up on the call. We talked about every other player. Maybe he was waiting for me to bring it up, but I wasn't bringing him up. And he goes, when I talk to other teams, they're under impression that they're not shopping Carr either.
Interesting. All right. Very interesting, because we do know that there will probably be a carousel that goes once the Wentz trade goes through. So I want to wrap up this Wentz discussion with a timeline here, because this is also where I think you may get the same kind of confusion. I get mixed signals from talking to people. Some think that they really believe it's going to go down soon. Like, by the time people are listening to this, who knows soon. And then that high ranking source I spoke to said he could see Howie taking this thing down to till March 19th, right? When the new league year begins.
17th. Yeah. It starts on the 17th.
I have a difficulty seeing that because Howie has so many other cap issues and players to deal with that I feel like he needs to move this salary and know what he's working with way before the start of the league new year, when he's got to be at, $40 other million off the cap. I mean, he's got a lot of things to do. The sooner for him, the sooner he can move on to everybody else he's got to work with.
Yeah. I would also say this with the situation. As one GM told me this week, he said, listen, the reason why Howie would be motivated to move him in terms of the situation, as you just outlined, you're not just moving the player, you're moving a contract. You're getting the cash off of cap. Cash is so much more important than cap. I cannot tell you. Cash is always king. He goes, you're moving the cash the owner is not responsible for anymore. He goes, I'm telling you, that's important. He goes, yeah, they're going to get zapped with a cap hit. They're going to have to live with it for a year, whether they post-June want it or not. He goes, they'll have to live with it. But the fact of the matter is, you're getting that cash off out of your lot that you have to pay. And don't forget, teams lost a lot of money around the National Football League without fans. Geoff,
right.
Fans were at the link briefly, right?
Very brief. Yeah, it was brief.
Yeah. So now you've got. I mentioned Mariota and Carr. Sam Darnold's available. It's just a matter of what does Joe Douglas want to do, their GM? Remember, Douglas inherited Darnold. He didn't draft him. There's no allegiance to the player. He did not have a good year. Let's call it like it is. I would say that the belief, Jet fans listening, there's very mixed reviews on Darnold, probably more negative than positive based on this season. You love his grit and his toughness. He's a gamer, but accuracy and processing, he's just not a guy that a lot of people are in love with right now. Mm-hmm. We'll see what the Jets do, but I suspect, let's put it this way, it would not surprise me in the least if Darnold stays, that they still had another quarterback that may push Darnold. Don't be surprised. Remember, his fifth-year option is due, So that one is a little bit. We'll see what happens. There's going to be some interest in him, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder with Sam Darnold is kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. How do you compare? Because I get asked this all the time, and I think you do too. How do you compare Darnold to Wentz? It's very difficult. Like, why would Wentz be the first domino to fall and not Darnold? And I think it's a difficult discussion. My personal feeling is that if you're looking for the safe route, you would go Darnold because there's some upside there. You might get him out of that Jets environment and bring him into your, if your team like the Steelers or your team like even the Colts, and you might really get what you were supposed to get out of Sam Darnold. But I still think Carson Wentz, if repaired correctly, has a way high. I don't want to say way, has a higher upside. Carson Wentz doesn't have the athleticism that he used to have, but he's still a good athlete, and so I still think he has a better upside that makes it worth pursuing him first.
Oh, I mean, it's not even remotely close in terms of talent level. Wentz is way more talented, but you know what? Talent gets us so far. I don't know where he's at, and leaving Philly may help him. Who knows? And if he goes with Frank Reich, hey, it's a guy that he enjoyed being coached by, no doubt about it. But that's Darnold. We talk about Mariota and Carr. Russell Wilson. Okay, here's the story. They're not. The Seahawks aren't trading him. They're not. Pretty strong sourcing on this one. Not this year though. Not only will they not trade him this year, do you have any idea what the cap hit would be if they traded him?
Didn't they just have a bonus kick in like a day or two ago that made it nearly, I don't want to say impossible, but it would have been a huge cap hit if they did trade him?
Yeah, so they do they do a structure completely different from the Eagles. They do a signing bonus and 1 year fully guaranteed money, and that's it. They do pay as you go because they do the first year fully guaranteed because they're not cutting the guy. So they are like they do what are called rolling guarantees. Yeah, so you're right. So what happened was Russell Wilson's base salary of $19 million became fully guaranteed 5 days after the Super Bowl. So yeah, exactly right. So they're not going to take on, okay? They're not going to take on. It's just ridiculous. They're not going to take on $39 million of dead money. That's not happening. Yeah, it's not happening. That's the first thing. Now, I had a pretty good personnel source with another team thinks that after the season, it's a little bit more palatable to move him. There'll be obviously some dead money. There'd be $26 million after this season, but he goes, you get that $19 million off. You only have 2 years left. They also have the decision to make on Russell Wilson in 2022, the fifth day of free agency, which is called the fifth day of the league year. He's got a roster bonus due of $5 million. Well, the reason why teams put sometimes agents ask for it because it forces teams to make a decision. So what agents told me who do contracts with Seahawks as a sort of a bargaining chip, if you're going to force these awful structures on us, at least get us out of these contracts early if we can. If you don't want us, you got to make a decision 5 days after the Super Bowl, which is called the fifth day of the waiver period for veteran players. So that's the way they do these contracts with veterans. The teams, the Seahawks are forced. That was the give back that the Seahawks gave to agents. So the structure is so favorable to the club. It's not even. I mean, I got to give them credit. That's a great structure that John Schneider does with the Seahawks.
Sure. All right. So you got to wait at least a year, if you want to try to get Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. What about Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson. This is funny. We might have talked about this on a show before, but one team that absolutely is infatuated with Watson tells me every time they call, and maybe they're tag teaming, maybe the GM and the personnel director are tag teaming, but every time they call, because again, what they do this time of year is they go over rosters, see if there's anyone who would interest you and anyone you want to move. Maybe we might like. And anyway, anytime they ask about Watson, Casario, the GM, changes. He either says we're not talking about him, or he ignores it. He changes the subject. So he's definitely not available. They're not shopping him. But again, folks, it's February, and if Watson and his agent David Mulugeta want to take this long, they want to take it past the draft, and if he's not traded by then, and they want to take it to August to September, then we're going to know how serious he is.
Yeah, well, the advantage quarterbacks have compared to other people who want out is that they get so much upfront money that if it means sitting out a year, and shoot, for a guy like Deshaun Watson, who's taken probably more hits than any quarterback in the league over the past 4 years, I don't think any GM from a different team is going to be like, he's been off for a year. In fact, they might see that as a benefit that he hasn't taken another year's worth of hits. So we'll see if he's willing to do that, though. That's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, the Le'Veon Bell situation completely fell on Bell's face. What a bad decision that was. He's washed up. I mean, he just doesn't look like the same player.
Yeah,
at 29 years old. God bless him. You want to do something like that? You want to sit out and not get paid, walk away from millions, and got a decent deal with the Jets, but he's just not. It's running back, man. Your point is well taken. At quarterback, if you're ever going to do this, although the fines are enormous in the new CBA, but if you're ever going to do it, the quarterback position is the one. If you, again, I know a lot of agents would say, "Don't do it. You're wrong." But Jeff's right. From a physical standpoint, all the hits that Watson's taken, it would certainly benefit his body, but I don't see that happening.
I don't either. I was just introducing that concept.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. Listen, that would be the position. That would be the position.
How about Garoppolo?
I get a kind of a chuckle with the speculation out there that, first of all, as a couple teams told me, one GM told me, he's like, look, dude, if you think they wouldn't trade him, you're out of your mind. He goes, if they could get an upgrade, they're trading him tomorrow. Because the problem is the guys that are available, there are questions about. Mariota looked really good coming off the bench when Carr got hurt. Looked like a shot out of a cannon. He's finally got healthy. He had a couple surgeries, I think, after either during the 19th season or after the 19th season. But he had been banged up, but he looks good. But he's an in the mix guy, Marcus Mariota.
Right.
If you look at the list of disgruntled quarterbacks or quarterbacks that are out there, Darnold, we mentioned. Carr it's going to be hard to get Carr out of there because he played really well. I'm not saying they won't trade Derek Carr, the Raiders, but it's their inclination not to. Whereas last year, if the Raiders felt comfortable with what Brady wanted, they were signing Brady. I'm telling you, they would have done it.
I believe it.
They just couldn't make it work. And that's a chapter in a book that I won't be writing.
I just feel like Garoppolo, he played well 2 years ago. He went to the Super Bowl. Of course, he was exposed a little bit in that Super Bowl. He wasn't as accurate when they started to really bring the pressure on him. But that was really because he had gotten hurt the year before. So it was really his first full year in the Shanahan system. He's still young, room to improve. There's just not that many quarterbacks available right now that I think are that much better than him. Like, I can't assume Sam Darnold would do any better. Just can't even assume Carson Wentz would do that much better.
Right. I was just going to ask you that. Garoppolo knows their system. They're running a true West Coast system, which is tailor-made for Garoppolo. Sam Darnold, I also think would do well in a West Coast system where let's put it this way. If you could reduce the reads for him, get it out of his hands quickly to help him get more accurate this season, and we could make all the excuses we want for Sam Darnold, no run game, receivers hurt, offensive line was suspect, you less than average, it wasn't as good as they thought it would be. Okay, they're all legitimate excuses. It still doesn't excuse the way that he played, though. And he needs to be way better. Garoppolo's probably look, Darnold's younger, obviously, but Garoppolo knows their system. Jameis Winston, we'll talk about him in a second. He's out there. He's unsigned, but the Saints want him back. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I know multiple teams are going to chase him, okay? That he played pretty well when he filled in for Tua when Tua was pulled. As a matter of fact, if you remember, Geoff, Tua had an awful game against the Bills. Awful. They got smoked in Buffalo. Tua was terrible. Fitzpatrick obviously would have replaced him had he not been on the COVID list. That would have been 3 games that they pulled Tua.
Oh, amazing. What a weird
I know
strategy they got going on there.
Crazy. So when you look at it, you're right. There aren't a lot of great upgrades. But as this GM told me, he goes, let me tell you something. I remember the conversation distinctly. He's like, they would absolutely upgrade over Garoppolo, but it's not easy to find guys who are available. Watson's off limits. Wilson, I don't know that a Seahawks would not listen. John Schneider's a smart guy, but there's no one like Russ. This is not a great draft for quarterbacks.
Right.
And they've won a lot with Russell. And folks, listen to Dan Patrick's interview with him. The stuff that's out there is so overblown. I listened to it a couple days ago. Dan Patrick pressed Russell Wilson to keep. must have asked him 3 different ways. Do you want input? Do you want input? And then he finally gave in. It was nothing like the quotes that I saw out there. So it's good to get context when you actually listen to someone speak.
It always helps.
Yeah, it does.
Look, the one movement I could see going back to Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Is and if the Falcons wind up drafting a quarterback
yes.
and they really love what they see, the way the Eagles did with Carson Wentz when they had Bradford, and what something happens to Garoppolo or the Kyle Shanahan just has some opportunity to get Matt Ryan in there, who he went to the Super Bowl with, with Atlanta. I could see that maybe happening, but
the cap hit.
The
cap hits. I mean, you can make it work with post June 1. It's a tradable contract, but the problem is that the cap hit. I think people sometimes misquote me. I didn't say. I just felt like, because I know some teams were looking at his contract and they said, "Well, we love to have it. It's reasonable for us, but it's not reasonable for the Falcons." You just have to. It comes down to your view, as GMs will tell me. What's your view on dead money? Some they don't like it, but they'll deal with it. Some non-starter, absolute non-starter. Right. That's why the Seahawks do their contracts the way that they do. But the thing is with the damn signing bonuses, like with Wentz's contract, Geoff, it's that option, $30 million option bonus. When you exercise it, proration goes over whatever 4 or 5 year period. And it's going to cause those dummy years. As Andrew Brandt once said, hey, it sounds great, but God forbid you have to get rid of the player.
No doubt about it.
The issue.
It is rough. All right, we're going to move away from quarterbacks, unless there's anybody else you want to do.
Oh yeah, Winston. I talked about this on the show I did with John Hansen a couple weeks ago, so I could talk about it here. The Saints are smitten with Jameis Winston. The first time I heard it, I was like, "What?" He's a super smart quarterback, and people say, "How could you say it when he had 30 interceptions he had in 19?" For whatever reason, he forces a lot of throws, but he's a football savant. I've been around him socially. He's really smart football-wise. I don't know why he throws so many picks, but with Sean Payton coaching him, they love it. They love his enthusiasm. They thought he practiced really well. Yeah, he clearly has got a real shot here with the Saints. And there's a saying, "Beauty's in the eye of the beholder" with the team that you're with. I don't know that other teams would feel this way about Jameis, but hey, Sean Payton went on this media tour, and sometimes with coaches, you never know if they're telling the truth, but it was true what he was saying.
He seemed pretty adamant, yeah.
So yeah, he does like him. So
yeah, all right. Well, we'll see how that happens. Wow, it's amazing how many quarterbacks might be just are in the news.
Yeah, we'll see. People are like, "Oh, a lot of these guys won't move." Watson, I don't see moving. Wilson, I don't see moving this year. I mean, I always put these buckets in. Well, Watson, we'll see how long he holds out if he does. Always put it's called the never say never bucket. Russell Wilson is never say never for this season. That's the way I look at that. Watson, that's a cat and mouse game with Watson. The team say they're not trading him. They're not taking. They won't take a call. But as I learned with Khalil Mack, you could tell me in June you're not trading him. When John Gruden has personnel control, says get him off my team because we don't think he's coming in. That changes it.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our tight end positional preview, Adam. First, we're going to tell everybody, like we always do, make sure you're checking out PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with their coverage of all of the Philadelphia professional sports teams like nobody else. Great coverage, great content, great podcasts. You can find them on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation, but go to that website, PHLSportsNation.com. We'll pause real quick again for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right, and if you check out Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them that Adam and Geoff sent you.
And let me add one thing. Special thanks to Sky Motor Cars, Brett Scholder in particular, the owner. He was very helpful in helping my mother buy a new car. We came into a situation we had to take care of with my mom, and I really appreciate his help. It really helpful to he didn't have to do it. He just stepped up once again, and we needed some advice on new car, and really appreciate his help. Great guy, and if you don't believe me, read the reviews they get. I've never seen car reviews this strong on how they treat people. It's not the usual car buying experience I could say about Sky Motor Cars. It's phenomenal. They do a great job.
That's awesome. We are big fans of Brett Scholder here on the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, let's talk about the tight ends because we've done quarterbacks, we've done wide receivers, we've done running backs. So you can check out any of our past podcasts, our last three, to get our kind of primer on those positions. What we do is discuss where the position's been, where it's at now, where it might be headed. So you can't talk about Eagles tight ends at this moment, Adam, without talking about Zach Ertz, who is very likely to not, I would think, unless things change, not be on the team next year. Even if they like him, Adam, even if they felt he was going to rebound, like even if Nick Sirianni kind of said, I really want to coach this guy, we know that Howie Roseman's in a real bind financially here and that he's going to have to make tough decisions. And the fact that they have a guy like Dallas Goedert on the come up makes Zach Ertz very, very likely to be in my either moved or maybe even cut. I would think that they'd find a taker.
Boy, I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not saying it won't, folks. I don't know, but I do know this. Dallas Goedert is their future. He is the guy at tight end. Zach is 30 years old, coming off a pretty. By the way, that high ankle sprain was pretty significant, I'm told. So was the Zach gutted it out and he came back to the best that he could. Mm-hmm. Zach does turn 31 in October. He is on the final year of his deal at $8.25 million. That to me is not going to happen for the Eagles. They're not. I don't see it. I'd be shocked if he's an Eagle. Absolutely shocked if he's an Eagle for this in September. Mm-hmm. He's available. It's not the issue. He's been available for I can't even count the months. It's not the issue. The issue is, are they going to find a taker? I know people keep asking us, hey, will they try to include him a Wentz trade with the Colts? The Colts certainly need a tight end, but I'd be shocked if he's involved in that trade, just from talking to other teams. And I've asked some people, hey, where are you at with Ertz? Tate wasn't great before Zach got hurt. Let's be honest here. You do have to wonder, where's Zach at where's Zach in his career now? He's clearly in the back nine. Does he have 2 good years left in him? 4, 3? Can't answer that. So it was a tough year for him. Tough year.
To me, Zach Ertz has never been his skill set has never been defined by tremendous athleticism. He's always been a very good route runner, and he's always been a fairly sure hand. He'll drop a ball here and there, but for the most part, he's going to catch passes.
Yep.
And when you look at tight ends who are good at that throughout the league history, those guys can play into their mid-30s, maybe even late 30s. Tony Gonzalez played that way. He's very athletic, though, so a little bit different. But Heath Miller played for the longest time. Antonio Gates played for the longest time. I think that if you're looking at Zach Ertz and you say, all right, I don't see a 70 catch, 1,000-yard receiver anymore, but I see a 45 to 55 catch, 800-yard receiver. That's actually pretty good still for a tight end. That's like what Dallas Goedert's numbers last year, Mm-hmm. So I think that merits at least. I think it would be smart for the Eagles to separate Wentz and Ertz, because if you're going to dangle out Ertz, you might be able to get 3 or 4 teams interested and just create a separate little market for him. I'm not saying you're going to get a first or a second round pick, but you might do better than just a throw in the Colts deal. You might be able to get yourself a 4th or something of that nature.
Yeah. Look, there's a rumor about Seattle. The Seattle, Greg Olsen retired. He absolutely needed a tight end. He could still catch. Yeah. Look, he would be good in a 2-quarterback system. If you're running a lot of 12 personnel where Ertz really just has to catch.
2 tight end system, yeah.
Yeah, he's got great hands. Yeah, like you said, once in a while. But the thing is, he makes so many tough catches.
Yep.
He's dependable, high character, about as good as character as you're going to get, dependable.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't know where the time has gone. This guy turns 31 in October. I mean, I remember when they drafted him 13. He had the buzz cut. It's been quite this, man, time has flown. It's been quite the career for him. Best tight end by far in Eagles history. There's been a lot of good ones. No offense to our friend Brad Selleck, but Zach's
been great.
Yeah, Zach's been tremendous. So we'll see there and where he goes.
Real quick. Why did you say you hope that the team doesn't release him, though? Is that because the optics of Zach Ertz getting cut?
Yeah.
I bet he would prefer that, because that gives him the ability to go wherever he wants.
Exactly, right. I get that. And maybe if they're able to try to trade partner, hopefully that's where he'll want to go. He just does everything the right way. It would be disappointing if, but you're right. That would actually help he and his agent Steve Carrick determine the market wherever they want to go. Right now, the question for him is, I just don't see him making $8.25 million or getting a deal. This one averaged, his last one averaged $8.65 million at 31 years old, which he turns in October, which is the way, by the way, teams look at it. What's his age this season? I just don't see him making anywhere close to that. You know what's interesting about this, the extension for Ertz? It was never about 21. He was going to have his 21 season plus a signing bonus, but the 21 season would be fully guaranteed. It was never about 21. It was about getting 22 fully guaranteed. Eagles wouldn't guarantee any of it.
Wow.
That's
amazing. The guy caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, and here we are. Better to be a quarterback than a tight, although maybe not than a tight end. But I want to get into the other guys, Adam, at tight end, obviously, because we both agree that Zach Ertz will probably be moved. So it's going to kind of be a new era for the Eagles in that regard. But first, it's not quite time for the madness that is college basketball in March, but that doesn't mean the fun has to wait. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all new players the chance to cash $100. New customers can bet $1 on any team to hit a three-pointer in any basketball game this week, and if your team makes it rain, you can cash $100. That's right. All it takes is for one three-pointer being hit by your chosen team to turn $1 into $100. That sounds like a no-brainer to me, man. This slam dunk of an offer will not be around forever, so head to the App Store now, download the DraftKings Sportsbook, and get in on all of the action. And if basketball is not for you, DraftKings Sportsbook has daily odds on hockey, soccer, and so much more. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its customers since 2012, so they know a thing or two about big paydays. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ITB to get your one shot to turn $1 into $100 when you bet on any team to hit a three-pointer in any basketball game this week. That's promo code ITB for new customers to get a shot at 100-1 odds on any basketball team to hit a three-point shot only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Winnings paid out in 4 $25 free bets. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's move into the next phase of tight end here. Obviously, with Ertz likely gone, Dallas Goedert finally gets his shot to continue to prove that he's a very good tight end in this league, very athletic tight end. I would think, Adam, that the only thing that would separate or hold Dallas Goedert back from even having similar numbers to Zach Ertz is staying healthy.
100%. Yeah, totally agree. To me, he's a 70-plus catch a season guy. I think the tight ends will be featured here. This is going to be more of like a West Coast type offense. Just, doing a little digging since Sirianni got hired, just talking to people who know Nick and these coaches. They think it's going to be a little bit more West Coast based in terms of structure, slants, and just not. We've talked about this before. Less vertical. Not that verticals won't be in it, but Goddard will be a prominent part of this passing game. I strongly believe that. So then the question would be, though, as we move this forward here, Ertz won't be with the team. I mean, he's not going to be an Eagle. Again, he won't be an Eagle, whether it's in a week or 6 months. I'll go and say it. He's played his last down for the Eagles. Why? Because Goddard's going to be the guy. You can't pay two tight ends. And Goddard, by the way, is up for an extension if they want to. I don't see any way. This is not a Wentz situation. He's not asking to be traded, at least yet. I haven't heard that he's been asked to be released or traded. But with Ertz, it's just that he's not getting his extension. He's not going to have the role that he once had. I don't see them paying him $8 million. It's not going to happen.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you. This will be Dallas Goedert's time to shine.
Yeah.
More explosive of an athlete than Ertz. We've seen the ability to break tackles. We've seen the ability to make yards after catch, after contact, to turn up the field and run upon catch as well. Again, has to show stays healthy. And, he's a better blocker. So he's going to be an inline tight end for the running game. So he'll be even making an impact on the team, even if he's not prominently featured in the passing game. But it is important then, Adam, that 12 personnel doesn't completely disappear. I think you want to be matchup driven. That's what Nick Sirianni has said.
Yeah.
So it's really important now that they find a pretty good second option tight end probably more of a flex type because if Goddard's going to give you your blocking, then you want another flex guy. We saw last year they signed Jason Kroom. They signed Hakeem
Butler.
Yep. They brought in Caleb Wilson, right? He was on their practice squad.
Yeah.
The son of their former defensive line coach, Chris Wilson.
How about that? Yeah.
And was there one more tight end that I'm not thinking? Maybe like a name I'm not thinking, but they could draft one potentially.
Oh, and to your point, they brought in Tyree Jackson, the former University of Buffalo quarterback, who's now a tight end.
One. Yes, the project.
I'll tell you what, and he's got a lot of Logan Thomas in him. Big guy, can move, but man, wildly inaccurate. Logan Thomas did a smart thing, except that he'd never be a quarterback. And what a year he had for Washington. Yes. Who knows?
Who knows? Oh, Richard Rodgers. That's who I forgot.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen, I'm a Richard Rodgers fan. I would try to bring him back.
You love this guy.
I like. How could you not? He's the only guy who catches passes who did a good job last year.
Yeah. Well, how about that game? He had 4 for 80. I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah, that Giants game, right? We basically helped win that comeback. I mean, my God, it was Richard Rodgers until Boston Scott finally caught the touchdown. But look, throughout his career, when he's healthy, he's a pretty good number 2 tight end, and he's been that for the Eagles. I would definitely bring him back on a 1-year deal.
Okay, so here's the way we see it. You and I agree, Ertz won't be an Eagle. Whenever it's a week, 6 months, he won't be an Eagle in September. So it's Goddard, and then I know I see this on our Facebook board, so I'll address it. The Eagles are not drafting tight end at 6. It will not happen. Not gonna happen. Right? You agree? Whoa!
Look, the Kyle Pitts thing is here's the problem with us making these kind of declarative statements.
All right,
we don't know
out there on this one.
I don't think we know enough yet. We've learned.
I know we don't, but that's not. But we know.
I know we know how he's making the pick. Yes. I know we know how he's making the pick. I know. I wouldn't handicap it as the most obvious pick, but I'm not going to rule it out because you never know how that draft board might fall, and he might be the best player available. They may think that it's a great. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just not completely ruling it out.
That's fair. I'd
probably put 4 other players ahead of.
Look, I mean, you and I are doing that draft show for the Fanatic. It's 17, was it?
Yeah.
And you said, who do you think it's going to be? And I said, it's going to be Eagles are going to draft Christian McCaffrey. And you kind of looked at me and said, are you sure? I said, I'm telling you, they're going to, if he's there. Of course, he didn't come anywhere close to him.
Right. And
I remember when I heard it, I'm like, this can't be right because this is not what they do. So I've learned my lesson. I'm glad you said that.
Right.
Look, one of these days, I don't know if it'll be Roseman or another GM in 15 years, but they're going to draft a linebacker in the first round someday. And was it Jerry Robinson who played for UCLA?
It's not going to be this year. I know that. Right. I would have more faith. I would have more belief that they would draft Kyle Pitts at 6 overall than Micah Parsons. Okay. And I say that because at the end of the day, they are more obsessed with being a great offensive team than a defensive team. I mean, you hear Jeffrey and Howie talk about you have to be a top 5 offense in this league to win a Super Bowl. They never say you have to have a top 5 defense. They say top 5 offense, right? So I would say they'd be more willing to take Pitts at 6 than Micah Parsons, but I still think both are unlikely.
But here's my issue with that. Okay, if you draft Pitts, you have to be 12 personnel. You have to be. Because the kid's got to play. You spent the 6th pick overall on a tight end when you have Goddard. Not on talent, he's a top 10, top 15 pick. I'm not disputing that. But if they didn't have Goddard, maybe a different story. Goddard is going to be the man at tight end for this football team. I'm telling you. He's going to be the man. They've been waiting for this.
I hear you.
Why was drafted the second round?
I agree with you. I'm not slamming the door on Pitt. That's all I'm saying.
And by the way, the Jaguars were going to draft him in 18. Right. 18. If they didn't draft, I think it was Taven Bryan was a player.
Was it in the second round?
No, I think it's.
Or they were going to take him in the first
Bryan.
round.
I'm pretty. If again, this is 18 draft, 920. Yeah, this is 3 years ago, but I do distinctly remember that was going to be they loved Bryan. I mean, they loved Goddard. They loved Dallas Goedert. That man, there a lot of teams like Goddard for that draft. Not everybody did. But you see this talent level. Greg Cosell, our good friend, he's going to be with us. We'll announce something at some point in the near future. Greg said Goddard is such a better athlete than Ertz. It's not even funny.
Right.
Remember the play against Dallas 2 years ago, which called back the 75-yard catch down the seam where he didn't even touch the guy. They called a push off.
Yeah.
Ertz is a tremendous pass catching tight end, but Zach can't do it like Goddard did. because he's got a better athlete.
Yeah, he's a better athlete. I don't know if that makes him a better player. It just makes him a different player.
That's fine.
Right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
No, and look, I think even though, you and I are fans of what Zach Ertz has brought to the table, and a lot of Eagles fans are because he caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, I can't say that I'm not tantalized by the idea of Dallas Goedert as the number one tight end and what he's capable of doing. And I'm sure the Eagles feel the same. And as you mentioned, he's going to be one of just a handful, small handful of players who are eligible for their contract extensions this offseason. It's going to be him. It's going to be Josh Sweat. It's going to be Jordan Mailata. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Oh, Nate Gary, or has he already been?
His contract.
He ain't getting one anyway, but
yeah, his contract's up. I'll tell you what, folks, we won't be doing defense for a bit, but this defensive, I'm going to be interested to see what happens at linebacker, because this might be the end of the small linebackers. I need to do some checking.
Oh, that would be interesting.
So I talked to someone who knows Gannon pretty well. He goes, if he brings in the defense, I think he's bringing in, you're not going to see those thin guys running around who can't tackle.
Right.
Those a little bit strong, but the guy knows the Eagles linebackers. He goes, I don't think Jonathan's going to want that, but I don't know how much pull this. I'm new to these coaches, so I don't know much about them, but I just ask guys who've worked with them.
Right.
So we'll see. But yeah, I agree with your assessment of Richard Rodgers that he's kind of like the old shoe. They can't get rid of him. Keep bringing him back. I do believe they'll draft a tight end. So let's assume it's going to be Goddard, a veteran for depth like Rodgers or somebody else.
Yep.
And I do think they'll draft one.
I do
think
too.
They'll draft one.
Yeah. And then maybe one of those guys that we mentioned makes a shot for a fourth tight end if they keep four. We'll still have to see what they do. Or at least pushes, they could draft a guy in the 6th round and he just doesn't, he's on the practice squad. So we'll have to see.
And I do wonder, before we get out of here, this is interesting. As you said that, I wonder about this. Because this is a new coaching staff, Roseman and his group, they don't, they're going to have to know. They have to know is 11 versus 12. How much 11? They don't need a percentage, but they have to kind of know. It'll help them not only what positions are more important, it's how many you need. Like you just said, or they're going to keep 3 or 4 tight ends. Look, they've done it with they've played with 2 tight ends when they've had injuries. So I'm fascinated. This is so unique about this. This is the coaching staff that they're not familiar with because they've never worked with them.
Right.
I'm really interested to see how the personnel changes and what the philosophies are and how they change.
I'm very, selfishly, I'm sure you feel this way too. You can't wait for the Wentz ordeal to be over so that we can focus on the rest of the team and go into the X's and O's and talk a little bit about Nick Sirianni and what his plans are. Look forward to that. Maybe even by the next Inside the Birds.
Don't jinx us.
But I don't want to jinx us. All right. That'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Want to give a big shout out to our executive producer there, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on his YouTube channel. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. Check him out on Twitter at Broads81. Big things coming to that channel as he's putting more resources into it. So look forward to that from Hunter. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.